Chris Brown, Matty Glab, One Bills Live, on location at Northtown Toyota, 1135 Millersport Highway in Amherst, just south of the 290. Stop on down. Join us for the second hour of the show, which begins on a Friday in the second hour, as always, with senior producer from NFL Films, Greg Cosell, also co-host of ESPN's NFL Matchup Show. And Greg's weekly segment is presented by Scott Lawnyard, an official commercial site work partner of the Buffalo Bills. All right, Greg, wild card weekend. We finally made it. The Bills won the division like a month and a half ago. It's been a long slog to get here, but we finally made it. And look, it's an interesting matchup, certainly one of strength on strength when it comes to Buffalo's offensive line and Denver's defensive line. So why don't you kind of spell that out and get to the granular level with us on that matchup for this week?
Yeah, I think overall the Denver defense is good. I mean, their D line is really strong. Cooper and Benito have become really good edge rushers. I think when you deal with someone like Zach Allen, who might not be well known to a lot of people outside of Denver, he's a really good D tackle. He's one of the best D tackles in the league. Plays literally every snap, which is remarkable for a D tackle. John Franklin Myers, another very, very good player. I particularly like their secondary. I mean, two names that I'm sure are not known to a lot of people, but I think their safety duo of P.J. Locke and Brandon Jones is really good. I remember watching Brandon Jones when he was in Miami. I thought he was a terrific player. We know about Pat Surtain. We don't need to discuss him. I guess the question in the minds of many will be the rest of the secondary. Riley Moss has been up and down this year, a physical, competitive player, but he's been up and down. And then Jaquan McMillan in the slot, who's actually been a nice player for them the last couple of years. I think this defense is pretty good. And as I mentioned before we came on, I'm a terrible prognosticator. The Bills could win 35-10. It wouldn't surprise me for a second. But I just think this defense is pretty good, and it's not an easy defense to play against.
Taking that a step further with the Broncos defense, I mean, they're known for playing man defense. They're known at blitzing. They're known for blitzing at a high rate. You have Pat Surtain, who can lock down a number one wide receiver. The thing about the Bills is they really don't have a true number one. You've got different guys involved in different weeks who act as maybe that number one because they have the hot hand. When you look at all of that, how can Buffalo find wins against Denver's defense?
Yeah, it's funny, Maddie. I've heard that all week, and you're not the only one. So, this is nothing about you. But I think that misses the point, because when you have a corner like Surtain, who you can lock up one-on-one, whoever it may be, it could be you, Maddie. It doesn't matter. The point is it gives so many more options to what you can do in coverage with the rest of your defense. So it doesn't matter that Buffalo doesn't have a quote-unquote number one in the way we think of a Justin Jefferson and A.J. Brown and Jamar Chase. The point is that Surtain can play man-to-man on whichever side of the field he's on, and it gives them so many more options to deal with the rest of the Bills' passing game. Because, I hear people say, oh, well, Shakir's going to eat up Jaquan McMillan. Well, maybe he can, maybe he can't. That we don't know that. But the point is, now Jaquan McMillan has more help from the rest of the defense than he would in a different situation if you didn't have Pat Surtain. So it's irrelevant that the Bills don't have a quote-unquote number one receiver. To me, that totally misses the point.
It appears to me, though, the soft underbelly of the Denver defense are their two inside linebackers in coverage. I mean, Sternad is a special teamer by trade. He's in because Alex Singleton's out for the year and went down very early in the year, as you know.
Yeah.
And then Cody Barton as well on the inside. We saw the Bills take advantage of matchups in that Detroit game against their inside backers with their running backs.
Yes.
Would you be surprised if you saw a similar approach this week?
I would not. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, it was the Lions game where, was it early in the game, maybe the second play, where they sent Ty Johnson through the line of scrimmage and he caught what was essentially the rail route or the wheel route, whatever you want to call it. I guess we're looking at it right now. and that was against Quan Alexander, if I recall. So I think you may not see that exact play because it was somewhat recent, and teams don't necessarily do the exact same thing if it was somewhat recent. But Brownie, I agree 1,000%. I think you will see them look to try to take advantage of that, especially when they anticipate man-to-man coverage, because they've got backs who are very good receivers in both Johnson, who's certainly become that guy, but even James Cook, who can be a very, very good receiver as well. And both of them can run intermediate and vertical routes. They're not just check down backs.
Yeah, I mean, their 3 running backs have 8 touchdown receptions this year.
Yeah, so I mean, that's a very valid point. I mean, Barton's, just a nice, solid NFL linebacker, but he's not a great athlete, and he's not necessarily going to run with Johnson or James Cook on intermediate and vertical routes. Strnad's an interesting guy. No question he wasn't the starter, and obviously Singleton went down, and Singleton has always been among the league leaders in tackles. But the one thing I will say about Strnad is he's long. He is 6'3", and he's a pretty good athlete. So again, I'm not sitting here saying he's a great player, but he does bring a lot of size and length. And this is a team that does blitz, and they do use Strnad as a blitzer as well because he does have that kind of ability with his size and length.
Focusing on Denver's offense, you've got a rookie quarterback in Bo Nix who doesn't operate like a rookie quarterback because he has so many college games under his belt, has put up some impressive stats as a rookie, and because of that offense ranks 10th, averaging 25 points per game. Is there any way that Buffalo's defense can get him into making rookie mistakes? And if so, what would that look like?
Well, no, you're also not only you're dealing with Bo Nix, but you're dealing with Sean Payton, who's really good at understanding how to put together an offense against defenses. And I think, again, we don't know how this game is going to play out. Bo Nix goes into Buffalo and throws 3 picks. No one's going to be surprised. Obviously, he's a rookie quarterback playing in his first playoff game against a really good team. But a couple of things about Nix that really stood out to me watching his tape. Some of them surprised me. Number one, his arm strength was better than I thought it was coming out of college. He made a ton of throws between the hashes, between the numbers, particularly against 2 high safety coverages, of which the Bills play a ton of 2 high safety coverages. So he was a really good window thrower, which you rarely see for a rookie quarterback in the NFL because you don't have to make those kinds of throws in college. The other there's a couple of players I think that you have to be very aware of with their offense, and this has really shown up over the last month or so. Marvin Mims has become a very intriguing player. The way they use him, he's a motion player. He's in the backfield. He's got dynamic speed. He can get deep. He's a really intriguing player, and they're very big at the other wide receiver positions. So yeah, I guess take that for what you will. But both Sutton and Valet are very big, and they're physical receivers, and they can make contested catches. So, it's the one thing they don't do well and haven't done well. So we'll see. I mean, ideally, you get them in a lot of long yardage situations, ideally. But Sean Payton also knows that they can't run the ball. So you might see, a lot of short passing game stuff just to get them to 2nd and 5. But, I don't think this is necessarily just, an easy offense and say, oh, well, it's Bo Nix. He's a rookie quarterback. I mean, he's played well, and he's played a lot of football. So, and he's played in the SEC where he played a lot of big games. So we'll see. I think I don't want to say there's concerns because, like I said, the Bills, when they're playing well, they can beat anybody, and they can beat anybody big. So, you don't know. But I don't think, I guess what I'm saying is I don't think you just chalk this up as if, hey, let's talk about next week,
Right. The one thing Bo Nix has had trouble with is getting passes bad at the line of scrimmage. He leads the league in that category with 16, which doesn't sound like a lot, but that's 1 a week basically, and probably in some cases more. As you know, the Bills have a lot of length at the end positions in Rousseau and Epinesa, and with all the perimeter screens that this team runs, I would like to believe that Rousseau and Epinesa are going to be hyper aware of that and get hands in the passing lanes. They have 2 interceptions off batted balls this season. How do you see that perhaps playing out, knowing that is a primary component of Denver's passing game?
Yeah, and it's a great point, Brownie, because it is a primary component because it, in a sense, replaces the run game because they've not really been able to run the ball with any kind of consistency. So what Sean Payton is looking for is he's looking for ways to create sustaining plays. And, they've struggled to do that running the ball, so they do it with the short passing game. They do it with screens. And you're right. You know that's being coached this week with Epinesa, with Rousseau. Look how many times this year have we seen Andrew Van Ginkel with the Vikings be so aware of those kinds of plays and make interceptions. So we'll see. But that's definitely an aspect of this game. I think that the pass rush to me has to become a factor in this game. And again, by that I don't mean you need 6 sacks, but Nix is a rookie quarterback. They don't run it. You want to speed him up. You want to get him playing fast. You want to get him starting to perceive and anticipate pressure. And I think that's an important component of this game.
In addition to the pass rush, are there any other components to Buffalo's game that you've noticed over the last few weeks that you think will factor into this matchup that have to play up to a different level on Sunday?
Well, I think their safeties are critical in this game. The Bills I'm talking about. Because as I said, Nix, he throws the ball in the middle of the field. He's aggressive. He's willing to make those throws. His arm strength on those kinds of throws is a little better than you might think. He's made some big-time window throws this year against too high. And I think that because Hamlin and Rapp are both healthy, right? They're back playing?
Yes.
Yeah, so I mean, I think they both had solid seasons. I don't think they're the rangiest safeties in the league. They're both solid football players. So I think those two guys are really important in pass defense because that the Broncos are going to look to attack that. And that's what they've done all year with the kind of routes they run because they've got 2 big receivers who are very good between the numbers in Sutton and Valet. I think that Hamlin and Rapp are really, to me, really important players in this game.
Looking at Buffalo's run game, they want to try to stay balanced as best they can. We know that Denver brings the number 3 run defense in the league into this game. Has anyone had any degree of success running on Denver? And if so, how has that manufactured itself? Because, some people say, well, you can't run up the middle on this team. It's like running into a brick wall. So If anything has worked for some teams in the run game, what has it been against Denver?
Well, I can't think of, specific of all their games right off the top of my head, but just thinking about what their players are. And I think that misdirection elements would be effective against this team. I think that, the linebackers, they don't have great speed and range at linebacker. Barton's, like I said, just a nice, solid player. He's been around the league a while, but he's with Seattle. He was with the Commanders, but he's not a guy that has great speed. I would think that you want to stay away from just, banging your head against the wall inside, although you're going to have to do that at some point. Obviously, every run's not going to be the same. They have a multiple run game, and they'll use that. But I think that it's important in this game for misdirection elements and try to get to the perimeter. I mean, Cook, the thing about Cook is we've seen it. I mean, he can break long runs. That's probably the best thing he does, more so than being a grinder. He's not built to be a grinder. Sure, there have been a couple of games over the last couple of years he's played that way, but that's not really who he is. He's not a grinder necessarily, although he seems to be in the red zone, but his style overall is not that of a grinder. So I think that's one way to do it because you don't want to get caught up. As good as this Bills O-line has been, and it's been a good O-line, there's no question about that. They're facing Zach Allen and Franklin Myers, who are 2 really, really good players. And even DJ Jones, depending on who's out there, DJ Jones is a really good run defender as well.
All right, Greg, thanks for setting us up for this one on Wild Card Weekend. We'll catch up with you next week.
Well, I hope we set up for another one next week, guys.
Yeah, might be a big one if the right teams win.
Correct. There'll be a lot to talk about if the right teams win. Yep.
Oh, yeah. All right, thanks, Greg. Have a good weekend. Enjoy the games.
All right, you too, guys. Thank you.